So, has your heart ever been broken and you're just like wondering, is there any hope? Well, of course, my friend who wrote this book, who is not, it's getting blurred out there. Wait, how can I get it? There it is. There it is.
Yes,
Thank you.
Letting go of your ex.
Dr. Cortney Warren is with us today, and she's going to give us hope. And specifically, we're going to talk about chapter 8, for those of you who rush out and get the book because your heart is broken. Cortney, welcome. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You know, this whole thing about the broken heart and letting go, it's bad enough that your heart gets broken. But then the stuff that we do to hold on to that broken heart, I need hope.
You know, there really is hope. There is so much hope, because the reality is that almost all of us are going to go through a really heart-wrenching breakup at some point in our lives. It is probably biologically designed for us to fall in love in a way that makes us feel addicted to our lover. It's the nature of romantic love. So almost all of us are going to go through it, but there is absolutely hope, because there are so many things that we can do to help ourselves get over our lovers. It's not easy. It's not even common sense sometimes, but there are things that we can do to move on and actually even transform into a better version of ourselves that can find a new love. So,
you know, the reason I guided everyone and wanted to talk with you today about chapter 8, because it's that part in the book. You know, I do have that personality that would wither if hope didn't exist. And I know that about me, so that I sculpt my work. And the one thing that I noticed in your book when I read it was that values, choice and values, that I had a choice and I could use my natural strengths. And that's what your chapter 8 is all about.
You know, choice is probably the most important thing we have going for us as humans. The ability to enter into our lives, assess where we are, who we are, and then actively and deliberately make choices that help us or hurt us. And I think one of the reasons values are so important is that ideally we want our values to guide our choices, right? So if I'm someone who really values community or friendships or loyalty, then I want to fill my life with choices that reflect those values. So I want to develop my friendships, give them time, give them attention. I want to be sure that loyalty is expressed through how I think and how I act in my relationships, right? And so being sure that our romantic relationships and the people we choose to date actually reflect what we say matters most to us, those core, most meaningful aspects of life that lead us to say, I'm living a meaningful life. I like my life. I actively choose my life, is so critical when you start dating again after a breakup. Because so often there's a transition phase where you had this relationship. At some point, you were probably madly in love with your ex, and then it ends for some reason. And now oftentimes people will say, who am I? What am I doing next? What's my life look like without this person in my life who was so meaningful and so much a large part of my identity even? And so exploring who you are, what your values are now, what you want for yourself moving forward, and making really deliberate steps so that you integrate those values into your choices now and moving forward is the way that you create your next life journey, right? Your next relationship.
Well, and I want us to get specific, because the reason this chapter resonated so much with me was you actually have an exercise in it, a values exercise. And what the values are those things, are natural characteristics. And we work with different ways of looking at that, but it's the same way I work in the field of flourishing and using your strengths in order to flourish. You're using the same exact technique. And that's what I love. Your exercise that's in the book, where you go through and you select the ones that resonate the most. Like you're not having other people tell you what's of value to you. Just like you're not having other people tell you you should or should not love this person, or, it's been too long for your heart to be this broken, or any of that other nonsense but you're saying, hey, wait a minute, pause and just look at yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And that exercise of circling the top 5 and then focusing on those, that became to me, I know when I did that exercise in a work environment, the first time, it was in the 80s. And that's when I was so into behavior. I was deep into behavior. And then someone showed me this exercise and it was about my values. And I was like, huh? And this was the same thing that you're offering.
Yes.
So when you mention the friendship, loyalty, that one really got me because I'm thinking about my heart being broken. And well, of course I'm rationalizing. I can't move on because I'm loyal. That's one way to look at that value. But I think that can help you see where you may be holding on too tight. Like, yes, you should be loyal. I had a client who had loyalty as a thing, and they were this very successful business person. They married someone in short order. It was clear they shouldn't be married. And the person said to me, well, I'm loyal, so it's hard for me to leave. And I used that terrible line. So how's that working for you?
Yeah. Oh, how's that working for you?
How's that working for you? And that's what I think your choice, So, friendship is another great one. And I'd love for you to use that example, friendship. How do I get the worst part of friendship and the best part of friendship in order to get me out of the hole? Like, what does it look like?
I really operate from the perspective that our relationships are really like a mirror. They're a mechanism for us to understand ourselves, actually.
Yeah.
And so part of the reason that values are so essential is that it's our opportunity to explore who we are and what we really care about and what we really like and don't like in our relationships with other people.
Right.
And so when you start introspectively looking at yourself, and then you notice that you're having conflict with a friendship or at work or in a romantic relationship, you notice you're having an emotional reaction where you're irritated or you're upset or you're sad. That is your opportunity for saying, where is this coming up against my values? Where is this coming up against what I need or want in my friendships or in my romantic relationships? And how can I change my choices to get more of what I want and less of what I don't want? And of course, in relationships, it also includes the other person. So it's, who are they? What are their values? How do they want you in their life too, right? And so it becomes that dance of intimacy that we talk about a lot, that dance of who am I, who are you, and how can we make this work for each other or with each other so that we both actively choose to be in this relationship. Because we get something meaningful from each other. And in general, in our friendships and in our romantic relationships, we want to be closest to people who share our values. In general, that comes out in the research because there's less conflict. But it's actually in those moments of conflict that you're most likely to learn something about yourself, because you're confronted with a situation where you really have to critically think about who you are, what you're bringing to the table, and how you want to respond.
Right. You just said something that to me, I was busy, writing it down. You want to get less of what you don't want and more of what you do want. And I think for us to just face that as the choice, it's not about whether or not you're ever going to love again, or whether this person was the right person, or whether or not your heart is broken. It's like, wait a minute, do you want less of that and more of something else? Like, that's the choice. And it feels better when you're giving me the choice to make my own life better. Yeah.
Because you're empowered.
Yes. Yes.
You have the power. And one of the most magical things about choice is it is actually empowering. It
Mhm.
will fill you up with a sense of self-efficacy and control. And that is a really wonderful thing for us as humans, because there are lots of things in life that you don't have control over, including
Correct.
our breakups sometimes, or our friendships sometimes, or how someone else is talking to you or treating you, or whether they like you or not. Very often you don't have any control over those things, but what you do have control over is your response and your choices. And that is so critically important to our mental health, that we
Absolutely.
feel some sense of that.
So absolutely critical to your mental health. I want to segue into a clip you had online about that great question that I think anyone with a broken heart has always, put out there as the possibility. Like, can we still be friends?
And we still be friends. This person was so meaningful to me. Or sometimes I see this, if you're the one who ended a romantic relationship and you just feel so guilty that you want to say, like, we can still be friends. We can still be friends. Can you be friends with your ex? It really depends.
Yeah.
It depends on the nature of your breakup. It depends on how much you like each other. It depends on whether you're still in love with each other or not.
Right.
You know, one thing I would say is that it's very, very difficult to move on after a breakup if you try to immediately move from romantic partners to just friends, platonic friends, because that shift takes some time. You need some space usually to transition. I'm not willing to say that you can never be friends with an ex.
I get it.
You're still sleeping together. If you're still sexually involved, if you're still incredibly emotionally reactive, either you're angry or you're sad or you're heartbroken.
Right.
Those are situations where I'd say, not yet.
Right. And I've had a number of men in my life in the last few years where they have been heartbroken. They have held on to that we can be friends and would keep approaching, doing the approaches on the, well, I know she needs this and I know she needs that. I'm going to be the friend to provide it for her. And you brought out a really great point that no, if you still like the person, if you're still hoping that you're going to get back together, if you haven't given up all the delusion of that point. So the word I used was ulterior motives.
Yes.
You have an ulterior motive.
If you have an ulterior motive, probably not going to be easy to be friends. And that ulterior motive, just as an aside, also includes because you don't want to be alone.
Oh boy.
One of the biggest reasons I see people reaching out to their ex isn't that they like their ex or they actively want to be friends. It's because it's so painful to be alone after a break.
Absolutely. Yeah. Also
not a good reason to be friends with your ex.
Yeah. And, again, what struck me about that in the work, because I work in the work arena, people will go into, they'll get fired from a job, but they'll keep reaching back to the people. And again, if there's an ulterior motive, you want to see how miserable the people are doing, or, that are still there, or you're hoping that they'll realize they made a mistake and they'll take you back. All of that same thing. It's that level of self-deception, which you are so well known for, that the original lies that we tell ourselves. Yeah.
And there are so many, especially after a breakup.
Yes.
No one's going to want me. What are they doing?
Yep.
How am I going to get over them? I'm never going to get over them.
Yeah.
They completed me. I'm worthless without somebody. I'm unlovable.
Correct.
None of those statements are true, but they're really common things to believe after a breakup.
Right.
That we have to challenge. And those are, again, going back to the skills. Is there hope? Are there things you can do? Yes. And one of the first things you can do is notice your thinking patterns and actively choose to challenge the ones that are harmful to you and untrue.
Yeah. And that's what I like about, letting go of your ex so much. You give us those questions to ask ourselves. You build it throughout the book so that when you get to chapter 8, the values, the thing, like you're finally ready. I think it would be hard to do chapter 8 in chapter 1 when no, I don't want to use my strengths to get over this person. I want this person back.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely. It's definitely a progression, because the first thing that we have to help people do when they're going through a breakup is stop the symptoms that are most upsetting. And once you feel like you have some control over your emotional reactivity and how sad you feel, and that the acting out, checking your phone, searching for them online, then we start to transition to how you got here. What did you learn about love in your childhood? What did you internalize from your culture? And how can we shift those beliefs to make them more healthy for you and helpful? And then as we emerge from the breakup is when you get to say, okay, now what?
Right.
Now, what do I want for myself? What do I want in my life, in my future dating relationships, in my friendships, in my hobbies, in my lifestyle?
Right.
And then how can I make choices to get me there?
Perfect. Perfect. Well, I think the Now What is a perfect place for us to end, because Now What is the book is coming out in audio.
It is, and it should be out in the next month or so.
Great.
So for anyone who likes to listen to books, I happen to be one of those people. Instead of reading them, it will be available through whatever audio format you like.
Yes. Well, Dr. Cortney Warren, thank you so much for the work you do. Thank you so much for writing this book and having these conversations. There we go. I got it to do it right.
Yay.
And as always, I know that your work is to give the world hope. And when it comes to self-deception, when it comes to letting go of those ex, you're the person to go to. So thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me, Andrea. Always delightful.
Thank you. And there.
Yay.